Hello, my name is Myles, and in this video we're going to be unleashing the power of curves in your color grading. Now this video was taken from my course on color grading in Final Cut Pro, although the same principles will apply if you're using Premiere Pro or even DaVinci Resolve. All you need to remember if you're using Premiere Pro is that when we duplicate a layer in Final Cut Pro, you can actually do the same using adjustment layers. As with any creative color grading, this assumes that you've already got your footage corrected and it's in a good neutral position to start with. Obviously the students in the course at this point have already been through the correction workflow, but with that said, let's dive into the video. To this point, we've already explored curves in how to get better exposure, get good contrast, and also to fix your white balance. But in this video, we're going to explore their power when it comes to making creative looks. We're going to be looking at 3 slightly different variations in how we can use them. And in this first one, we're going to apply the effect straight away to the clip in order to get a strong look.
Okay, so here we are with our edited clip, and it's been color corrected using the color correction workflow that we went through earlier. And what we're going to do in this first step is to apply the color curve change straight away to the clip. That's as easy as going back up here, picking the color curves from the drop down, and we'll see the RGB channels. So when we were talking color correction, we discussed how you can use these curves to get good white balance and how they're extra flexible because you can target specific ranges. You can lock off ranges or you can target ranges just by using the pickers on the curve itself. So to get going with our first look, we're going to get a simple cinematic effect just by limiting the dynamic range in the blue channel. So you can do that by dragging up from the very bottom and down from the very top. And already that's got some style pumped into our image. If you want to be more subtle than this, what you can do is instead of using the extremes, you can just simply limit the dynamic range by adding an inverted S-curve just like this, and that's going to be a bit more of a subtle effect. But already this is looking like it's got a bit more character than just playing straight out of camera. How easy was that? So in our second look, we're going to replicate what's called the cross-process look. That hails from old film techniques, and we're going to replicate that in the digital world, again by using the curves straight onto the clip itself. And we'll do a similar job in terms of limiting the dynamic range of the blues, but we'll invert that with the reds, decreasing the shadows, lifting the reds in the highs, and then you can manipulate the greens to taste. And this is what's known as a cross-process look. Of course, the more that you move the curves around, the stronger the effect will be on the clip.
Now that first method is really straightforward and quick to do, so those are the upsides. On the downside, you can go a bit too wild with the curves and it can really ruin your image. In this second step, we're going to limit the power that the curves have over your image so that you're able to get a look with it, but not actually push it too far to make it really over the top. Subtlety is king, especially if you're just starting out. So in this method, it'll still look a bit more stylistic, but you'll also have a professional, natural look to it as well.
So in this second method, we're going to go for a warm summer feel. And we're going to do it by adding the effect to a duplicate clip above. So I've held Alt and dragged out a clip there, or Alt or Option. So I've got a duplicate layer above, and I'm going to switch this to Overlay Blend mode. Now that'll immediately add a dose of contrast and crush the shadows. So I'm going to add a new color wheels effect. I know I've already got one there, but I'll want a new one, and you'll see why. And I'm going to try and negate the contrast just so it's similar to the before shot, and I can toggle on and off with the V key. So that's somewhere similar. So to get our actual look, we're going to apply the curves effect to this top layer. Now the benefit of doing it this way is that because it's on the overlay blend mode, even if you get quite aggressive with the curves, it's going to be a more limited change that's actually visible in the final image. So it helps us stay fairly neutral and to develop a look without being too aggressive about it. So for this warm look, I'm going to obviously play with the red channel. I want to increase the reds in the highs, but I'll balance that by decreasing in the shadows. And I'm going to take some green out of the highs. Likewise, I'll balance in the shadows, and I'll support the warm look by taking blue out of the highs, but I want to leave the shadows a bit more neutral. So something like that has immediately given us a warmer look. This is the before, and that's the after. Now a really helpful tip at this point is actually to save the effect that you've just done. So if you go to File, Save Video Effects Preset, we can call this Myles Summer, And I don't want to save the original color wheels because that was part of my original correction. The effects that we've just done were the second color wheels to neutralize the contrast that we added, and also the color curves obviously for the warm grade. I want to also keep the compositing menu option because that was the overlay blend mode. So if I save this effect, I can actually do this much quicker in future. So let's take this biking clip here. I'll make a copy, a duplicate above again, and I'll find the effect that I just saved in Myles effects. There's Myles Summer, and I'll drag the effects on, and then in one click we've got a warm feel to our footage, and that's a much more summer/sunset type feel than was originally shot. The beauty about saving presets like this as opposed to working with LUTs is that you can actually delve back into the original curves and you can make adjustments. So if this was a bit too much, you could limit the reds that we've introduced. You can play around with the blues, the greens. You can customize the look however you like. We'll apply the summer look once more on this clip and we'll take it one step further. So I'll just apply the preset there and we can see immediately we've got a much warmer feel to the video. Now what I'll do is I'm going to apply another curves effect to the bottom layer, and I want to this time manipulate the luma channel, and I'm going to fade the blacks a little bit just like that. Now that is a bit hipster, but also you might find that some summer grading is done like this to enhance the feeling of warmth. If you keep playing around with these color curves, you can get a multitude of different looks. You could do all your grading in this method. So for example, here I've gone for a green-based cinematic look.
The third method builds on the second, and we're incorporating other tools within Final Cut Pro to get a more developed look.
Let's use this method to build a cold winter look. So again, I'll be duplicating the bottom layer, but I'm actually going to duplicate it twice. On the middle layer, I'm going to add my summer effect, just because I know that takes care of the compositing and also adds the correction to the contrast. So I've got an overlay layer at this point with the contrast corrected and a curves effect already applied. It's just this time I'm actually going to undo these changes because we're going for a completely different look. So as I do this, I'm going to disable the top layer by clicking on that and hitting V, so I can see the changes that we're making on the second layer. And I'll begin by simply raising the greens in the shadows and raising the blues to an even more extent. So this already feels a little cooler. Now where we'll build on this is with the third layer, which I'll reactivate, and I'm going to change this to a multiply blend mode. Now that's done the same thing with the contrast and exposure. It's crushed the hell out of the blacks, but I'm just going to leave that for now, because ultimately what we'll do with this layer is this will add a bluish tint to the whole scene, but I'll be reducing the opacity of the layer down, so the effect will be muted anyway. So for now, let's take care of the bluish tint. So I want an effect called colorize. I'll apply that to the top layer, and we're going to remap the blacks to a dark blue, and we'll remap the whites to a light blue. So you can see that's applied a heavy bluish tint to the whole thing. Now what I'll do is I'll limit the effect of this by changing the opacity to 30%. So that's really reduced the contrast that it added, and also the blue effect has been tempered. So if I just toggle this top layer on and off using V, you can see that it has had a subtle effect on shifting the rest of the hues towards the blue cooler tones. Now if you wanted to isolate this grade away from the skin tones so that they remained a bit more natural, you could go back into the original clip and you can apply a new color wheels, and we'll isolate the skin tones using a color mask. Let's have a look at that. So that's picked some stuff in the background up, but I'm not concerned about that. I just wanted to pick up the skin tones. And we can warm those back up by pushing the mids towards orange and red. So you can see if I toggle this effect on and off, we've just added a bit more color to the skin tones, which helps give the subject some contrast compared to the background colors and makes her look a bit more human again. Again, you could save this effect down by going to File and Save Video Effects preset, but you'd obviously have to do this 3 times, once for each layer. So the only change you'd want to keep in the bottom layer would be the adjustment to the skin tones, and then you might want to call that Winter 1. You'd have to do the same with the second layer to call that Winter 2, and then the same with the third layer to call that Winter 3. So I've done that already, so let's just grade this clip with the same winter feel. So I'll make 2 extra duplicate layers, and let's find the effects that I've saved in my effects. One thing to check is if you've saved presets including the original masking, you want to be sure that the masking has picked up your skin tones. In this case it hasn't, so you just have to redo that stage to mask out the skin tones. That's that job repeated, but honestly I think that is too aggressive in this case, so I'm going to limit that effect slightly. Again, you can tweak the grade by playing with the intensity of the top layer and also adjusting the curves that you applied in the second. And that's it, that's all you need to do to apply a cooler feeling winter tones to your grade.
So there you go, that's 3 or 2.5 ways to use curves in your colour grading. In the course itself, obviously we do go into more detail about the other tools and we look at different looks and how to get those. So feel free to check that out if you're interested. There should be a discount link in the description below. Otherwise, I hope this is enough to get you started. Thanks for watching this one, I'll see you next time.